We also call ourselves asset protectors, right? Because a trademark is an asset. So when you're forming a business, just at the foundational level, your trademark is protected as an asset under your legal entity.
Welcome back to the New Money Podcast. Today, Allie and I could not be more excited to have an incredible guest with us on the show, Zara Watson. And Zara is the co-founder of Watson and Young Law alongside her husband, Sean. And our conversation today is really going to be incredible for you out there. If you are a female founder, you have built an incredible business, and now you're ready to turn this business into a real legacy, but you want to make sure as you're growing the business, you're also protecting this business because this business is such a huge asset and part of your wealth strategy. So, Zara, welcome and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you both for having me. I'm so excited to finally be here and to do this with you both. My name is Zara Watson Young, and I'm the co-founder of Watson Young, just like Hannah said. And we represent female founders and we help them protect their intellectual property, specifically their trademark and copyright.
So, you and Sean are trademark and intellectual property attorneys. Tell us a little bit more about how you got into this practice because it's a very specific niche of law, right? And now you also do it alongside your husband. So, you
Yeah.
both are this incredible powerhouse. Tell us about how you got into this business.
Sure. So my story is very non-traditional. So I was actually doing special education law prior to doing intellectual property. My youngest sister, she had a learning disability. And at the time, my parents were suing New York State. We're based in New York, and they were suing New York State for special services. And I ended up working for the law firm that represented them. And they were amazing. I had a great experience in terms of working with them, but something just didn't feel right. And I said, what else can I do? I still want to practice law. I still love practicing law, but I don't like this area of law. And at the time, I had a lifestyle blog called Legal Pearls of Joy. Yeah.
I didn't know that
about you.
about Zara.
Yes.
So cool.
And it was, again, a lifestyle blog sharing travel experiences, but I was creating content. And they said, oh, I can help other content creators protect their work. So I literally delved into everything intellectual property. I read every book. I attended seminars, conferences on intellectual property. And I said, okay, this is it. This is for me. And I had a choice. I said, I can either work for another law firm or start my own thing. And I said, okay, this is it. This is my chance. I had no children. I didn't have a mortgage. I wasn't married to my now husband. We were dating. And I remember I called him up and I was like, okay, Sean, this is it. I think I'm going to start my own firm. And he said, okay, go for it. So that was back in 2017. And then we grew, I created a very successful business. And in 2022, I said, okay, this is it. This is time. It's time for Sean to join us. So in 2022, we joined forces. So we switched the name from Zara Watson Law to Watson and Young. And funny enough, it was actually a dream of ours. In college, we would joke around. We said, you know what, like imagine combining our names, Watson and Young. And here we are today. We did it. It's Watson and Young, 2022.
Wow, congratulations. I mean, you guys have built such an incredible business. Something that you said that stood out to me in your story is you said you noticed you could help other content creators. I'd love to hear from you how the landscape has changed with this uprising of social media influencers, online creators who now have businesses. Is that who you primarily work with? And how has the industry shifted?
Yes, great question. So at the time, back in 2017, there was pretty much Instagram and Facebook, right now Meta, but it was Instagram and Facebook. And it was such a different world in the sense of, oh my goodness, you had one platform. There was no Instagram stories. It was just posting to your feed. But still, like the internet, even at that time, we call it the wild, wild west. So there were different types of content creators just posting and not really thinking about, protecting what they're putting out, like specifically content, whether you're a course creator or just an influencer. Influencer marketing was huge at that time. It still is today, but that was really when it started to become very popular. So we had influencers entering into different contracts, not getting paid, putting out content, not protecting the content, using different, slogans or just names that became recognizable and not protecting that. So I feel like that was really the boom of the industry of content creation and just influencer marketing, things like that. So in the sense of how has it changed, I think it's become um, not worse, but there's just more content now. People have become aware that this is where everything is trending. So creating content is huge for every business. I think back in the day, or when I first started in 2017, even for lawyers, right? Like having a digital virtual law firm that was just very new. So I think people now understand the importance of creating content to promote their business, and they understand the importance of protecting that visibility.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because now with there being so many content creators, and I feel like so maybe it's just because of the world we live in, but so far less and less of people just sharing their personal life and sharing pictures of their kids. And
right.
we have so many business owners that are, coming up with their own creative thought leadership and presenting that online as part of their business. So it feels like you have to be even more unique and creative in what you say because there's a very good chance that you could be saying something almost identical to, if not identical to someone else. I even think about just how AI is changing this landscape
Yeah.
too. And, what somebody else is putting in and getting out as a prompt could be the exact same as you. So I know that's where you come in a lot, helping these female founders protect some of the originality that they've put into their business. So I think we should take a step back for someone who's listening and maybe is in business or has been in business and hears about trademarks and copywriting. Could you define those two words specifically to just to somebody who might not understand what that is?
Absolutely. And that's actually one of the most common questions we get. What's the difference between a trademark and a copyright? And a trademark protects any of your branding elements. So whenever it comes to anything that you're naming in your business, that is what you trademark. So a trademark protects your business name, a logo, a slogan, any catchphrases that you commonly use. And you have to think, do I want to become known for this? Right? This name that I'm putting out there, do I want people to say, okay, the Wealth Collaborative, this is how people are going to recognize me. I want to make sure I protect that. Right. And then
Right.
also you want to make sure that no one else is copying you, right? That there is no other the wealth collaborative out there. So you want to make sure that you're owning your business name, logo, slogan, and any catchphrases. So that's where trademark comes into play. And then copyright law protects any of your content. So any content that you're creating, so whether it is a blog post, if you are a photographer and you're, shooting images or shooting photos, videographer, the actual video content, if you're a course creator, a coach, any of your program materials, that falls under copyright law. So I always say copyright equals content. So any content falls under copyright law.
So I bet a lot of people come to you for trademarking and then tack
Yes.
on the copyright because you don't think you need it at first, and then it's like,
Exactly.
well, I
Yes.
have all this proprietary coursework or whatever it might be. So I'm so curious how you see it. If you see it as more as asset protection or as a part of a business owner's overall strategy for their company.
I see it as both. And really, so we also call ourselves asset protectors, right?
Mhm.
Because a trademark is an asset. So when you're forming a business, just at the foundational level, your trademark is protected as an asset under your legal entity. So, for example, most business owners are LLCs, right? So your trademark is owned by your LLC. And that the reason for that is because your LLC protects your assets, your personal bank accounts, your home, your trademark as well. It's considered an asset. It's an asset that you can pass down, right? Whether through a will or a trust, or if you're going to sell the asset, it's a trademark is an asset as well. So for us, we're protecting that asset.
And that's where we come in working with so many founders, and they think the definition of an asset is traditionally a stock, real estate. It's hard sometimes for business owners to see their business as an asset and to see that if I'm going to take this asset to a level or grow it to a level where maybe we're doing 10 million a year in revenue, or maybe we've created something so unique that somebody might want to actually come in and buy this business when me, the business owner, potentially the founder, is ready to exit the business. And I'm curious if you have had any, circumstances where a client's come to you kind of in that final hour saying, "Hey, I'm ready to take this business to exit," but they didn't have the trademarking in place. They didn't have that protection. And what I would assume is that at that point, that could kill a deal potentially, right? For a buyer. Maybe you haven't had that, but just speak to the importance or maybe the time frame a
Yeah.
business owner should be considering
Yeah.
getting this trademark in place really before it might be too late.
Yeah, I actually have a good friend, a business colleague, who had to basically close down her business.
Wow.
She was in the beauty industry and created this incredible skincare line and ended up having to shut everything down because she lost the rights to her trademark.
Wow.
So she had been building the business, manufacturing. She was trying to get into Sephora, for example,
Mhm.
and filed the trademark, unfortunately, too late. And there was another registered mark, and they actually opposed her application. So, an opposition is basically it's trademark litigation. So, as part of the process, the USPTO, the United States Patent and Trademark Office, they will approve your application for basically the final phase of the process. During that final phase, anyone in the public can actually oppose your trademark application. So that registered business, they discovered her pending application and they opposed it. And they entered into a year-long battle, basically, fighting for the mark. She tried to coexist, and essentially a coexistence means that both parties can use that trademark in the marketplace. They didn't want to coexist. So she ended up having to stop her business. She didn't want to, or she lost her trademark rights. She didn't want to rebrand or anything like that. So she ended up just closing everything down. Yeah, it was a nightmare for her. So I always say starting the process as soon as possible is key because you avoid having to deal with scenarios like that, potentially having to rebrand everything, especially if you've been in business for a very long time. All that customer trust, of course you can work on that, but it's just not the same, right? That brand identity, that brand recognition that you've built is basically lost. So start as soon as possible. I joke and I say, you should have trademarked yesterday because, you want to avoid all these situations from happening.
Yeah, it's so devastating. And it just, as you were talking, I was thinking about life insurance.
Yeah.
That's like
Yeah.
not the sexiest thing that we talk about, but it is something that we try to create urgency around because it's like when it happens, you don't want to be in that devastating situation. And taking action sooner rather than later is so much cheaper, right? I'm sure that year-long
Yes.
litigation was just so overwhelmingly expensive.
Absolutely.
Um, and to the point that she had to even close her doors, which is so sad. I'd love to hear from you for somebody who's listening, who's like, oh gosh, I haven't made this a priority. What's like a great first step someone can take when they are like, oh, I actually do have assets that I want to protect?
That's such a great question. I always say do like an audit, like a take your pen and paper out and say, okay, what do I want to protect here? What do I have to protect? I have my business name. Do I have a logo? If I do, okay, great. I probably do want to protect that. Have I created any content that I need to protect, whether it is a course, even a podcast? You just kind of just take a look at your business and see, okay, what do I have here? And then from there, I would say, okay, let's do a quick search. The United States Patent and Trademark Office, they're wonderful. You can actually search their database. You do have to be very careful, though, as a warning, because it's very literal. So, whatever you put out, it's going to come back to you. So, for example, for us, like let's say we type in Watson and Young and we'll do a search and see, okay, is anyone else registered or do they have a pending application? They make it relatively simple. They've actually updated their database. So, it's a little bit more easier to search. So, you'll do that preliminary search and see, okay, is anyone else using a similar name? Is it registered? And then from there, I would say, work with an attorney to see, okay, I know I have a business name to protect, a logo to protect. What do I need to do just long term? Because oftentimes, unfortunately, business owners they'll kind of file on their own and they don't know what they don't know. So you may be filing in the wrong classification, not including certain classifications. So it's really important to make sure that you are working with someone who knows what they're doing to make sure that you're protecting yourself long term.
I actually wanted you to speak to that at some point
Yeah.
today was to speak to the business owner who, there's so many things that we can DIY as a business
Yep.
owner. And Allie and I find a lot of clients coming to us too who have, done their very, very best with the best intentions, which is all you have when you say, hey, I'm going to start investing my money, or hey, I'm going to finally, go through the process of researching the trademark and filing for it. But there are a lot of mistakes that can be made in that process. And the one thing that might be the biggest mistake or the biggest lesson learned is just the cost associated with what you don't know. So I'm glad we touched on how important it is to work with an expert and someone especially, who has had this depth of experience and working with clients, which I know you and Sean have. I actually was peeping on Zara's Instagram the other day on one of her loyal uh stories and all your posts, anything you put out. And what I found was the post you did about UGG.
Yeah.
And it really was a light bulb moment for me. You'll have to speak to the case if you can or would like to. Um, but what essentially she was trying to help people understand was that this brand exists in one country, but they sell their product and they operate business in multiple countries. And while they were trademarked in one country, they didn't have those same protections overseas. So, could you speak to that and really help the business owner understand, how do I know if it does apply to me? I might have a client that's in Europe and I'm in the US. Is that something that applies or is it product based? It just really piqued my interest, that whole topic.
Yeah, it's a very sad story because many of us know and love the brand UGG.
Oh, my favorite companies. Truly,
Yes,
truly.
yeah. And let me first talk about why it's important before I go into the actual story. So, as business owners, you may not realize the importance of protecting your brand internationally, right? You're focused just locally where you are, domestically. I would say it's more so for it applies more to product-based businesses
Mhm.
because you're, selling your products probably online, most likely, and you want to make sure that you're able to work with everyone internationally, right? So the way that the trademark office works is you're protected where you apply. So for the United States Patent and Trademark Office, you're protected within the United States, not internationally. So for example, for Uggs, they're selling boots, right? Well, the I'm not going to use them as an example. Let's say you're selling a handbag in the United States, and then you have international customers. If you want to enter into that market and be protected, you want to make sure that you're filing for an international trademark. And the USPTO is wonderful because they have different things in place, different types of applications in place, where if you file for one application, you're protected in different countries. So, for example, if you are selling in France, for example, there's something called the Madrid Protocol, and you could file for France and any of the other EU countries. So, it saves you time and money to do that. But going into the UGG story, so there are two names basically. So there's UGG since 1974, and they are the original creators in Australia of the UGG brand. However, another company called UGG, they are based in the United States. They basically filed for UGG in the United States as well as 130 other countries. So now UGG, the Australian company, so UGG since 1974, they of course sell here as well in the United States. And UGG that is based here, they sued the Australian company because they only have a trademark for Australia and New Zealand. So they basically had to rebrand because of that. So can you imagine the original creators of UGG has to rebrand?
No.
Yeah.
And I think this is where people get confused about trademarking, thinking it's only applicable to these big businesses of big size, and that you can only get sued if you're above a certain amount of revenue. And it's always that sentiment where it's like, this will never happen to me. This will never apply to me. And that story sheds so much light on multiple important things. One, making sure if you need to be registered in multiple countries, make sure you are protected in multiple countries. But two, that these things can happen to anybody, right?
Yes.
It can make it at the big level, the big business level, and also the small business level. And I'm sure it might be helpful for someone to hear, how you've helped someone that maybe is in that smaller business level. And I know what you also do is litigation. So
Yes.
you have had some instances where you've had to support and go up there and represent a client that it's been very costly and then it's draining. And I can only assume it takes up so much of your mental energy as a business owner to go through that process, which in turn sets the business back. So, do you have a story of a client that's of that smaller size that maybe somebody can be like, okay, I can relate to that?
Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
so many stories. Two people come to mind. These two clients, I don't have their consent to share the story, so I'm just going to talk about their brand. But one of them, she went viral literally overnight. It's so hard to not to say the name of her brand. But she basically created a fitness program, and it went viral. So, my gosh, so many different companies like Lululemon basically started using, can you believe
Wow.
Lululemon started copying her brand? She went on national television. And another very well known influencer, she basically started using hashtags of her program name. She went viral. So Target started using her brand name, and she hadn't started the trademark process yet. So we had to file immediately, and basically start reaching out to these different companies and have them take these program names down because they were infringing on her trademark. So that's one client. Um, and then another client, let's see who I can share the story of. Okay, so this you may have heard me speak about. So we call it the $40,000 case. So she spent $40,000 in product packaging, came to us after having done that, and we started the process for her. And then we discovered another trademark that was registered. And in a way, it felt like a miracle because we were able to just describe her mark, just in a very specific way, and it went through. It registered. She was so thrilled because originally she's like, I'm not throwing anything away. I'm not
Yeah.
rebranding.
Oh,
This is it. And, unfortunately, I hear you, but I can't do anything about that. So, again, we were very, very happy that we were able to have her trademark register. But had she started the process, early and sooner, this would have been avoided. So
wow.
start as soon as possible.
I was going to say, so if you're someone who's on like the good faith side, so not
Yeah.
necessarily the UG side, we should say,
Yes.
and you do invest in your brand name, you make the investments, you're just thinking that like nobody has this name, and then you search the database and you see someone has your name, but let's say it's like we're in wealth management. Let's say a cycling company is also called the Wealth Collaborative. Is there something you can do there? And is that when it's a good time to bring in you?
Yes, yes, yes. I love that question. And absolutely. So two identical trademarks can coexist as long as they are in different industries.
Okay.
So two common examples is, well, one is Dove. So there's Dove soap and there's Dove chocolate,
Chocolate.
right?
So, yes. Right. Of
There's
course.
there's Delta faucets and Delta Airlines, right? Two exact trademarks or two identical trademarks, but they're selling completely different things. So that's where the strategy comes in, where we would have to describe what you do in a very specific way so that the trademarks can basically both register. So, yes.
So, a part of the conversation I also wanted to have today was, helping our audience understand that these assets that we have that we're building, whether they're our business and then trademarking our business, whether it's the more traditional assets like Allie and I manage our clients' retirement portfolios, we help them invest in real estate or buy other small businesses. All these things are assets. And so, not only do you have to be thinking about, protecting them to avoid all these mishaps that can happen as you're actively running a business. I'm sure you have clients that, have desire to pass down the business to their family and make sure that this lives on long after they pass, right? And so I think what we're really speaking to here is just the importance of having this done so that if your goal is to leave a legacy to your family, that this isn't something they have to go through down the line, right? Um, so I know in your case, like you're not actually an estate planning attorney, but this is just such an important piece of the puzzle to have in your overall plan. Um, I'm actually going to go back and maybe we can insert this question as we're talking about the viral thing because I want to talk to that piece. Um, so you mentioned that the one client that you worked with, she went viral. And so this happened overnight, happened really fast. And, in this world of online business, I feel like that is how a lot of these businesses are being built. You can get on TikTok or get on Instagram and go viral with millions of views and honestly make hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And so what we see sometimes is that when that happens so fast, that business owner then gets 10 steps down the line and now they have to play catch up, right? So, like how can a business owner even start to take like those first steps, if they've gone viral? Um that's really where you have to like work with an expert, right? too.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So I would say it depends on just to your question
Mhm.
specifically. I would say it depends on what they're putting out there, right? So
Mhm.
if they have a program name that they're using all the time, it's on all their graphics, on all of their marketing material, you want to make sure that you protect that. I always say with visibility comes risk. So you want to make sure that as you're putting yourself out there, you never know what can happen. You can go viral overnight. So you want to make sure that you are protecting yourself and just thinking about these things, thinking about, okay, I have this program name that I love and that's gaining a lot of traction, a lot of visibility. Do I have to protect that? Right. So really just thinking from that CEO, having that CEO mindset and saying, okay, do I have to protect this? And you probably do. So you want to make sure that you're working with an expert,
And
truly.
and one more thought that just popped into my brain on this is that sometimes there are businesses that do go viral, but then it's really a short-lived business. And so, do you ever have business owners that come to you? And is this part of your process finding out like what are your goals for
Oh my
how
gosh,
long
yes.
you're going to stay in the business, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because
We were just talking about actually how do you transition from an online business owner to a recession proof business? And it's actually crazy. If you look at the average cycle of a recession, it's 10 to 17 months. So let's say you're relying on TikTok. If one, you haven't trademarked, and two, you haven't moved any assets outward, like maybe to a newsletter or something that you own, you can end up getting really punished for that, sadly. So, Zara, when we're looking at the longevity of someone, we really want to get to know where they're going. Obviously, they're here today, but where are you going? How do you start that conversation with a client that comes in to get the overall strategy of the long term vision?
That's my favorite. Thank you for asking. That's my favorite part of the whole process. So our consultations are basically 45 minutes long at least. And we spend the majority of the time speaking to your vision. So that is so important for us from a legal perspective as well, because we need to know what are we protecting? What are you currently offering? And what do you have the intention of offering? And the reason for that is because when you're trademarking something, there are 45 different classifications or categories that you can protect the brand in. So we need to know, do you plan to, for example, have a podcast? Do you plan to launch a book? Do you plan to sell merchandise? Do you plan to open a brick and mortar one day? Right? We need to know everything. So as part of our process, we will ask you a lot about your vision. We'll ask you what's your 12 to 24 month plan in 5 years, right? Or 10 years. If you had a magic wand, so to speak, what is the ultimate dream that you have for the brand? So I love speaking about the vision. In our onboarding form, we ask you for all this information. I tell our clients or potential clients, once we give you the onboarding form, go crazy, brain dump everything. Literally, go to a coffee shop. It's an actual form. So like sip on your coffee and just dream and vision. Like where do you see the brand going? Because we want to make sure that we're protecting you not only for right now, but just long term. So we are true partners with you and we grow with you. So as you're expanding, for example, our clients will tell me, maybe after like a year or 2 years, I'm launching a podcast now. And we get to not only celebrate with you, but we help you protect that, right? Add on a classification, or you may be ready to sell merchandise. Let us know, right? We're going to make sure that we're protecting you along the way as your business is growing. So that's my favorite thing, talking about the vision.
And this is what I love so much about our clients working with you is we both take on that strategy
Yes.
of helping them dream and figure out what is the long-term plan for your business because as you know, we help clients that are business owners use their business and the success they're having financially to grow their personal wealth. And we really value being able to be on that long term journey with our
Yes.
clients. And so watching their businesses grow,
Yes.
watching them create and protect more
Yeah.
assets, it's
Yeah.
so exciting. But I love how the way that you run your firm really
Thank
aligns
you.
so beautifully with ours.
It truly does. And honestly, while you were talking, you said 45 classifications.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, I'm sold. That's exactly why someone should be outsourcing this, not only
Yes.
for obviously, just the ins and outs of how to get around things and make it work for them. And then also just to protect them to the ultimate capacity. But I'd love for you to share, where can people find you? Do you have a podcast? Where can they hear from you? We'd love to
Yeah,
hear.
sure. So we are at Watson and Young Law on all platforms, and we are very active on Instagram specifically. And then we do have a podcast. It's called The Legal Edit. So we actually have a newsletter and then also our YouTube channel called The Legal Edit. So you can find me on there as well and binge all of our content.
And highly encourage you to do so. I also know there's a way people can have that 45-minute consult
Yes.
call with you, which is so helpful to do a deep dive of your business. Zara and Sean are experts. And so if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, I am ready, I need to take that next step, Zara and Sean are absolutely the two that you want on your team. So
Thank you.
thank you so much
Thank
for
you
joining
both.
us on the
Zara.
podcast. So great.